Noreen so that she can share that with you as well. So this is going to be a pretty interactive session. As you can see in the where I'm screen sharing in our Zoom tab, we have lots of friends that have already accessed our agenda and resources. For today, this is part 1 of our Smart Learning Suite series. So we actually have 2 parts. Today, we're going to be talking about teacher-led or synchronous lessons that you can create and deliver right through Google Drive by using Smart Learning Suite online. So we've done the introductions for the most part already, and then on the agenda you'll see we are first going to pretend to be students in my class, and we're going to engage in a lesson on managing stress. And I think it's been pretty appropriate the last few weeks just because people have had to make lots of different shifts in education and teaching practice. So you'll experience this from a student's perspective, and then you will experience it from a teacher perspective where you get to build that lesson. Now, if you have a different lesson you want to build, that's totally fine. But if you want to build the exact same lesson, you will have an opportunity to do so. And then we have some time for additional questions that perhaps weren't answered in the chat or during my presentation, and a survey. The second page, just so you know, contains some resources. The first one is very, very relevant to this session. It is our step-by-step guide to Smart Learning Suite online, and you can access that online at any time. So hopefully you've bookmarked or saved a copy of this agenda because we will refer back to it for our teacher portion. All right, so let's get into the student portion. So my lesson today for you as my students will be on stress. What is stress and how do we manage it? But I want this to be interactive so that it's not just a presentation. So what I'm going to ask you to do is open up an incognito window in Chrome. I'm assuming you're using Chrome, or open up a new private window and go to hellosmart.com. From there, join my class as a guest. Okay, and I'm going to model that for you right now. So as a student, I want you to open up an incognito window. So you can right click on the Chrome browser and click New Incognito Window. Or if you have something that looks like my screen, you might have 3 dots in the upper right corner. You would click that and select New Incognito Window. And that's just easier for us as teachers. However, your students would actually sign in. They wouldn't need an incognito window. We're just using it because I'm running this as a teacher and a student, and then I want you guys to be teachers as well later. And I just came from another webinar, so I have to join my own class. So when you get to hellosmart.com, you'll have an option to join a new class. And I'd like you to join a new class as a guest, okay? And my class code is 75472. That's what you're gonna put in there to join as a guest. So I'll join my own class, and what I'll do is actually have some side-by-side views of my teacher and, can I move this? And my student view. So let me just close this out. Okay. That way you can really see what's going on. And you will be interacting with me. So let me just rearrange this here. We have my larger screen here will be my teacher view. And then you're also in my class as a student, and I'm in my class as a student on the right. So you'll see that smaller window where I can show you what's going on from the student's perspective as well as the teacher's perspective. So again, I'm just going to display for you my class code. So you're opening up an incognito tab or window, you're going to hellosmart.com, and you're using my class ID to join me as a guest. Okay, so you're joining as a guest using my class ID 75472. And this is exactly what your students would do as well for synchronous or teacher-led lessons, except that they would sign in instead of joining as a guest. We still have quite a few people popping in, so that's great. We're gonna have lots of friends today with us. And if you have questions, remember to type those into the chat so that Beth can answer, or she can stop me if it's something that I need to address for everybody. Okay, so I'll give everyone a few more seconds here just because we have a big group, but you are going to hellosmart.com in an incognito window and joining my class as a guest using my code 75472.
And Teddy, I just want to tell everyone that your students and you are, once you do sign in, are going to use your PG credentials. So students would use their PG CPS student log on to join your class.
Yep, exactly. And that's a great point, Noreen. There's nothing for you to do as far as registration as a teacher. When we get to that portion of today's session, you'll see that you just sign in and use Smart Learning Suite. So same thing for the students. They just sign in as themselves and they're ready to go. No special registration is required. Okay, seems like we're stabilizing in our lesson participants. So I'll go ahead and get started with our example lesson. And remember, you're my students for this part, so just kind of have fun with it. Think about how you could use this with your students. And then we'll actually recreate this lesson together afterwards. Okay, so this lesson, again, is on managing stress. So let's start with our first interactive activity. And that is called a shout it out. So in shout it out, I am seeking to get 100% participation from my students, whether we're face-to-face or remote using devices. And I wanna know, how would my students define stress, which is our focal topic of today. So let me go ahead and start this for my class. Now, as a student, you will see that you have a text box, big white text box on your screen. You have one response option. And again, the question is, how would you define stress? As a student, I might say, I define stress as having lots of maybe anxiety. Maybe that's how I define stress. I'll go ahead and send that response up. And then once you send that response, you'll see a smiley face and a great job telling you that you completed that activity. Once you do that, feel free to navigate over to the Zoom tab where I am displaying all of the different responses. That way you can see them as they pop up. So essentially I have this blank canvas slide that is collecting all of these little Post-it notes with my student responses. Now, I gave you just one response, but you could have multiple, like 3, 4, 5, 10, however many you want for the students to answer the question. So I see a lot of great responses from all of our students. Let's click into some of these to make them bigger. So someone defines stress as having a lot of things to do and feeling overwhelmed. A lot of work, worrying, pressure or tension. Someone else says feeling overwhelmed, and someone else says a lot of work to do and responsibility. So it's probably something we've all felt in the past couple of months or several weeks, depending on when you started school, because everything's just been so different this year, right? But hopefully I can show you a couple of activities that will make teaching a little bit more streamlined for you, and also help you get some better outcomes for your students and maybe some more engagement as well. So in this lesson, I've gotten all of my students to respond. If I want, I actually could reveal, well, let me do this. I could reveal in this cog wheel who's responded. So I can see that Reg has given me a response, Michelle, Kay, Anna, Noreen. I got all of them to give me responses. So I'm doing pretty good. And I can move these responses around if I want to talk about them more or perhaps put them into categories. Okay, So let's continue, and remember this is a synchronous lesson. This is part 1, and we're talking about teacher-led synchronous lessons where we're all in the same Zoom link, Google Meet, or whatever you're using. And then next week we'll actually talk about asynchronous. Okay, so this next slide is just a content slide, and with that I wanted to show you that as a teacher I can pick up a pen and I can direct your attention to a particular concept as I'm talking about it. So we're highlighting some critical content, talking about how stress is the body's physical or emotional response to a demand, and it could be positive, which is eustress, or it could be negative, which is distress. And then we have stressors that cause us to feel stress, and it could be either positive or negative. So this is just a content slide that I talk through with my students. All right, so let's move on. Okay. So I wanted to show you this next activity. It's called response, and it can be used in a variety of ways. I'm using it more towards the beginning or middle of my lesson, but you could also use it at the end as a formative assessment. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and start this for you for a class. And again, this is a synchronous activity. We all have to do it together. And go ahead and answer these couple of questions I have for you. So it's just 2 questions. And submit your answers when you are done. And you'll get another great job smiley face. If I wanted to, I could also show the questions on my teacher view so that anybody in the Zoom meet could see the live results as they are happening. So number 1, I can see the live results for how much stress have you experienced in the last month. And we see that of the people who have answered so far, 28 have said a lot of stress. So as a teacher, maybe I'm a little concerned because that's a large amount of students that are in my class. So we have actually 31 now. As you can see, it's updating. And we have 14 that say some, and just 1 says none at all. So I know my students are under a significant amount of stress. Let's look at the live results for question number 2. A word cloud will actually pop up in a second. I think it's maybe taking some time since we have so many people in our class. Let's look at the list view first. I see that 4 people have said sleep, 3 so far have said exercise. We have some other contributions like acupuncture, gospel music, eating, exercising such as walking. Someone gave us that particular example. Going outdoors, exactly. Let's see if my word cloud will pop up, and it does. So as you can see in my Zoom window in that tab, my word cloud is actually changing as my students are putting in those responses. Okay, and the more times a response is given, the larger it will be in this word cloud. So for example, remember I said a couple of people said walking. If I click that, I can see 3 people have said that. And that's why it's larger in our window. Okay, so this is a pretty cool tool. And I did not use it as an assessment. I use it more of like a check-in to see how my students are feeling. If I go back to the overview, I do want to show you one thing you'll be interested in, and that's if you do want to keep this data and these responses, you would end the activity and you can review it if you have right or wrong answers. These are just polls and opinion questions. So your review as a student is just, what you said, and it's just highlighted in blue. But if I wanted to actually look at all of these later on and kind of see those 36 students that felt really, really stressed, maybe I want to see who they are so I can help them, I will select Export Results. This will download an Excel spreadsheet, which I can actually reference later. And I don't even have to download this right now. I'm just doing that so that I can show you that it can be done. I could, in fact, open this lesson up later on when all my students are done and download it then, because it's not going to go away unless I reset or erase all of those answers. Okay, so it's just loading. Okay, so now you should be able to see quite a large Excel spreadsheet of all of my students' responses. And there's no % correct because, again, I used it as a poll and a check-in, not some type of formative assessment. I just wanted to engage with my students because this topic is probably so sensitive. All right, so that's response. Now I'm going to take you into something called a collaborative workspace, and you are actually going to work in groups, even though you're probably all over the place within your district, right? Maybe you have some kids at home, some kids at school, some kids that come to school sometimes, but usually stay at home. So it doesn't matter as long as they have a device and can join your class. So let's set up this workspace, and we have 59 people, so that's quite a bit. That's why the program is saying, how many teams would you like? But it's only giving me the option for 9 teams. It's because there's just so many of you. But if you had 30, then you'd get options for 5, 6, 7 teams, things like that. So let's go ahead and let the program sort you in. And we'll go ahead and start. You will see a little message that says, here's your team, get ready. And then you'll see the directions for the collaborative workspace. Because we're doing a synchronous lesson, I, of course, as the teacher, would probably give you some explanation. So I would say, all right, guys, so as you begin this workspace, I'm asking you to use the text and image tools on the left of your screen to identify stressors, so things that can cause stress, either positive for eustress or negative for distress. So you're gonna add things around eustress and then distress using text and images. So team 1, as the teacher, I can go into your workspace and I can actually pick up the text tool, which is the letter A, and eustress, I can say, I think, you know, positive stress could be an academic deadline that motivates you, you know, to get things done. Distress, an example of bad stress would be like maybe feeling overwhelmed, right, with lots of things to do at work. So I'll go ahead and get you guys started there. And then as a teacher, I'm actually going to pop into another team. Let's see what team 5 is up to. Oh, they found the image tool. That's great. So they don't need any help. Team 5 is doing good. Let's check in on team 9. Great. Team 9, you found the text tool. I'd like you to locate above the text tool where there is a Polaroid icon, Polaroid with a plus sign. That will be your image tool. You'll notice that you can upload images from your computer. So if you sent your students on a scavenger hunt or had them snip things from the internet to submit, this is where they would do that. They could also add web links if you're using this as a research project. But what I'm asking you to do for this one is add online images using Bing Safe Search. So arguing is a form of distress, right? That's not a pleasant stressor. So we will search for that and an image of that I'll put right in here. Let's see what some other teams are doing. One thing I do want to let you know is that as a teacher, I can go into any of these teams and see who contributed what. So if I go into team 7 and I want to know who added this picture of a kitten, I can just click that picture and its drop-down menu that appears, and I'll see that Ivy added that. And I might even pick up my text tool and say, give her some feedback. I might say, Ivy, is that your cute kitten? And then that is directly to that student, even though this is sort of a group project. Okay, Beth, is there anything I need to answer about Workspaces or anything so far? Looks like everyone's having some fun.
Yeah, we're sorry, I was muted. We're doing okay. We're trying to get a few more people logged into your class, but we did mention that if you did have a group larger than 54, because so you can accommodate up to 54 to be in teams like this, but up to 100 if you wanted everyone on one team for idea catching.
Yeah, so hopefully your classes are not larger than 54 students at a time. But if they are, then just keep in mind that this wouldn't be, you wouldn't be able to put them into teams. You just have to have them all in one, which could get a little crazy. Okay, so I'm seeing some great work in all of the teams. And like I said, as the teacher, I can go into any of them. So someone says, yeah.
Again, how you can add text. Obviously, you can demonstrate that on the teacher side, but maybe also on the student side. At least one person in the chat didn't catch that. And Beth has kindly added some text to explain it, but I think it would help to see it again.
Yeah, definitely. So it's the same way that I'm adding text as a teacher. On my left, I have the menu items. So do you as a student. So I'm in Team 8 as a student, as you can see on my right screen, my right page. And what I can do is grab that last icon. It says the letter A, that last middle icon. You click that, and then you click where you want to put your response. And then when you click out, you can actually pick it up and drag it. And you can even make it larger. Okay, and you can turn it around if you need to. If you change your mind, you can delete it or duplicate it.
And I should note, if any of your students are on a very small screen, for example, if any of you today joined from your iPhones or your small tablets, sometimes those tools do hide under what looks like an ellipses button on the left. So you have to click the ellipses button to expand them. I know very occasionally when I join as a demo student from my iPhone, everything is really small. And if I try to put in text, it's hard to find that text box. So it can be a little tricky on the really small screens, but it is there generally. Just rotate your screen if needed. Thanks for demoing that, Teddy. It looks like the teacher who is struggling with it found it.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, excuse me, I have a question. I've been here, I was waiting to be assigned to a group, but I didn't get that notification, and I was still waiting.
Huh, interesting. Let me see if I can find you in here.
My name is Agnes E.
Well, now, Teddy, you have more than 54 students today in the lesson. And since you chose Teams, perhaps Agnes?
Yeah, you may have gotten cut off if there were more than 54 in when I started it. I know we've had some more since. Okay. So I think when I started it would have been okay. But yeah, Agnes, I think you were one of those, you might have been like number 55, and so you weren't able to get in.
All right, okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Fortunately for all of you, I'm fairly certain your district does not give you classrooms full of 50 plus students.
Hope not.
So you shouldn't run into those kinds of issues in reality with your students.
Yep, although we do have a large group today. So yeah, just 54 is really the max for Workspaces. And yeah, we are running into that issue because we have a huge PD today, but you hopefully won't have that issue. So let me show you a few other things, because we've already seen Shout It Out, where we all put in some Post-it notes to our teacher. We've done a response where we had our opinions contributed, and now we did Workspace. Let's continue. This time, everyone will be able to do this because it's a handout. It's actually an individual handout. So what you're gonna do as a student is simply select Start. And this can actually be done synchronously as we are doing this all together right now, or it can be asynchronous, which I'll talk further about next week because that's what part 2 is all about. So as you can see with this individual handout, I have a link that is in there that you're gonna use. And your directions are to read that article that's linked to that page and pull out information, some critical information that you read that explains how stress affects us physically, mentally, and emotionally. And again, just like with the Workspace, you're using the text tool. So you're using that letter A tool. If you want to play around with the other tools, totally fine. But as a student, I would click the link and it'll open another tab with that location that I'm trying to send my students to, that very specific website about how stress affects us. So I would read through the physical effects. I see that the heart pumps faster. Great, maybe I need to go back into my handout, grab my text tool, and for physical effects, I'm gonna put in heart pumps faster. Now with the text tool, you may have already noticed this, but I do want to call out that as you are contributing, you can actually change the font of the text, the size of the text. So maybe I'll put this in size, I don't know, 24. And then you even have some color options, as well as maybe I can make it bold or underlined. I can center it, etc. So I have some text options for my contributions as well. So go ahead and play around with the text tool just for a minute or so and see how handouts work. Be sure to see how the link opens up in another tab and just add a couple of things to your handout. While you do that, I am going to go into some of your handouts and see what you've got going on. I see someone, maybe they need help, so I'll put a little note there to see if they respond to that. I can cycle through everybody's individual handout and I can give them feedback right away. So I see a lot of people haven't started yet. Let us know if you need help. I can put some guidance in there too as your teacher.
This is Agnes Ikunsheta. My wondering is, if you teach math, how do you incorporate this in your, in your math lessons, or either synchronous or?
Yeah, so with math, I started with a Google slideshow, but for math, if you have PDFs or even PowerPoints that you might use, you can actually open these with Smart Learning Suite and add activities. So like Shout It Out, the one we did at the beginning, you could do that as something in the beginning of class where you give them an equation for them to solve and they maybe send you the solution with Shout It Out. And Shout It Out also, you can set it so that instead of students giving you text, they can give you images. So with their device, they could snip an image of how they solve the problem and actually send that. And that's kind of a neat idea too. And handouts can be any pages out of a PDF that you want to make into a handout. That way everybody's work, like as you can see for me, I have 61 students in my class. All 61 of their handouts are trapped in this lesson. So I can go back later and actually go through each one and give them a grade for it too. So lots of ways, just depends on the content you're teaching.
I have a question. So I've used this during the spring distance learning. Question is that because as a teacher, you only have one code.
Yes.
And when you have about multiple classes, it happens to be that when you have the old students in the new class, you still have additional students. how do you manage different classes?
So there are a couple of things you can do. You can, at the end of each class, you can have your students go up to the 3 bars in the upper left of their screen and select leave class, because their class time is over with you, and you will have another class coming in. So if you don't successfully have everybody do that, it's not a problem, because as the teacher, I can go up to where I see 60 students have joined in my class with the icon that looks like 2 people. When I click that, I can select edit, and I can select all and then remove them. I can't model that for you now because it'll kick you all out of my class,
Okay.
but you do have that option at any time. And you can even select specific people that you want to remove if they like joined your class at the wrong time or something.
I'll ask you in the second part. I think it's, I'll ask you in the second part, because I try to keep what they've done as a, just to print out and have a record. So sometimes it's hard because I have classes mixed together with the names.
So as far as printing out the handouts, you could print each individual handout, but you could also just make a copy of this lesson. If you go up here, I'll just show you real quick. You can make a copy of this lesson for like period 1, period 2, period 3. That way you don't have so many in one file. And this file is just something that lives in your drive, in your Google Drive, in whatever folder you want to put it in.
Awesome. Good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's a great feature because then you can also differentiate if you have lower or higher level classes where you add different activities too. So good option there. Any other questions on Handout before I move on? Okay, I'm gonna move on. The next activity is pretty fun. It's called Team Quiz, and we are all going to take it together. We're going to be in teams. This will cut off again at 54 participants, so some of you are going to be the unfortunate ones that don't get to make it in here, but you can definitely watch what we're doing as we do it. That way you get an idea. So let's start for class. This will be a review. Okay. And I have all of these people in my class. So you'll see on my teacher view that 7 students can't join because the game is full. Because like we mentioned earlier with Workspaces, and of course with Team Quiz, you can only have 54 students. But those of you that are in, we'll put you on 9 teams. So I have been placed on Team Gray. We have Team Green, Violet, Teal, Red, etc. Let's go ahead and start this quiz. So we're reviewing the content that we just learned. Let's see who finishes first.
Gosh, it's a tight race between Team Blue and Team Red.
Yeah.
Pink.
No one's getting any wrong, it looks like, so that's good.
Impressive.
Yeah. If you do want to play around and get things wrong, even though you're almost done, the question actually comes back to you. So as a student, you get that corrective feedback. The question will keep coming back until you get it right. And your team can't finish unless you finish your quiz. So in the interest of time, I'll go ahead and end this quiz.
Congrats to Team Pink. And if you,
Yay, Team Pink.
and I do want to point out that for many of you, you might be familiar already with something called Monster Quiz. So Team Quiz and Monster Quiz are very similar, just different, animations and graphics. It's that formative assessment, sort of team building, collaborative activity.
Yep. And now that we're done, and remember I ended it early, so you obviously would probably just let it play till it finishes for your teams. But let's go ahead and review so that you can see how useful this is. Well, first of all, my class did amazing. They're totally ready for the formal assessment. I can give them a summative assessment on this because I see team 1 through 3 got 100% right. Team 1 through 4, 5. Yeah, most of you got 100% correct, so that's great. You can see your individual score, which tells you what you got right on the first try. And as a teacher, I can engage my class in a class review. So this whole quiz, my class averaged 88% correct on the first try. So it's really, really great. My kids are pretty much ready almost for the assessment that I'm going to put in the grade book, because this is just a review game, remember. So I can see that I don't have too much review to do, but I do want to emphasize that yes, stress can be positive or negative. 2, exercising is the best way out of the 3 given ways here to manage stress, and unused stress is a term for positive stress. So I'll review that content with my students or dive deeper into it if their scores were lower. Maybe I do like a reteach or enrichment session. Okay, so that's a monster quiz. Has to be done synchronously just as we did it. And let's, I think I have one more thing I wanted to show you. Okay, we are gonna do another workspace because I wanna show you one more feature that you may not have seen yet. It's pretty new. I'm gonna put you on 9 teams, keeping in mind that 6 of you won't be able to join, so you'll have to watch. Now in this workspace, you'll see what it looks like in just a second. I've provided you with a graphic organizer. And so we've done this whole lesson. We started with, what do you think stress is? How would you define it as a student? We've gone into thinking about our own stress levels and really personalizing that content. So within that lesson design, I really made that connection for my students. Then we did some research about the physical, emotional, mental effects of stress. We read an outside source. We did a handout. And now we are working on some ideas for how we might manage stress. So we're gonna apply what we've learned, and we're gonna put that into our brainstorming web. So I'm on team 3, and I'm gonna pick up my text tool and put in using the treadmill at the gym. Maybe I do that a few times a week, and that helps me manage my stress levels. Let me enlarge that a little bit. Maybe I pick up a picture and I look for, I think someone said maybe gardening earlier. Maybe someone likes to garden. Let's see what that looks like. Maybe put a picture of gardening in here, and so on. So here's where we're really applying that concept. And like I said, we started from the ground up, and we built on this lesson to really engage our students and to have them start thinking about the concept of stress and how it can be managed. And again, I can go into anybody's workspace. I can provide feedback. So someone says traveling, that's great. Someone says enough sleep, definitely. Okay, so I feel like my students have a pretty good grasp of the content that I shared today. All right, so if you're ready, I want to take you into the teacher aspect of things, and I want to invite you to create this lesson with me if you want, or create something from an existing file in your drive. So like I said before, as a student, you could go up to the 3 bars and leave my class. Or as a teacher, I could go up to where my students are, where it looks like 59 students are still in the class. I will click that, and then I will edit, select all, and remove, because I want a clean slate for my next class that's coming in, just like we talked about earlier. And now I have 0 students and everybody's out of my class. All right, so I no longer need this lesson open. So what I'll do is I'll close it. And I'd like you to go back to the agenda and resources. And I'll actually put that link in the chat right now. Hold on a second, let me see here.
A question.
Yeah.
How do you save the student's work? You still that you just end up with? Are you able to save it in PDF?
How do I save students' work? It actually is trapped in that lesson. It's in that lesson slide. So whether it's a handout or a collaborative workspace, it's just that bubble with the student name or the team number.
Okay, good.
Yep, and unless you delete the lesson, it'll be there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So once you get over to the agenda and resources doc, I want you to scroll down to where it says teacher experience. With our teacher experience, I'm giving you the option to build the lesson that I just delivered with you as students. So what you can do is either build that lesson, which I'm going to do, so you can follow along with me by clicking the step-by-step guidance. Or you can start with something you already have in your drive. But to have some practice, I'm just providing you with the guidance for building this managing stress lesson. So with this practice time, number 1 says, click here to make a copy of that Google slideshow, because that's how my lesson started. So I will go ahead and click that. And it will force you to make a copy. So go ahead and click make a copy. And then you can retitle it whatever you want, because this is now your copy of the file we're using to build this lesson. I'm going to call this so I can find it.
And just to emphasize what Beth has noted in the chat, Teddy is now giving everyone this opportunity to practice. So you can start with her stress Google Slides file that she's doing here in her demonstration, or you can go ahead and grab any of your existing Google files or other, if you have a PDF or whatever. You can start with any content you already have, but for today's practice session, Teddy wanted to offer you a Google Slides file to start with as a practice opportunity.
Now, once you make a copy of that lesson and rename it to whatever you want, go ahead and close that lesson tab out, just close it. And what you're gonna do is actually, let me move this over here. What you're gonna do is just go back into your Google Drive, and you're just gonna search for that lesson. So, oh gosh, where is it? There it is. So I have it there. Let me just see. Oh, it'll open it up. You know what? Don't do that. That's too hard. I want you to go to your recent. Okay. So it should be the most recent file right at the top that you have put into your Google Drive. Because remember, so I'm going to do this one more time just so everybody's clear. You're going back to the agenda and resources we started with in the beginning. You are following along with me by clicking the step-by-step guidance link to the Managing Stress lesson, because we're going to build it together. And you'll have your own copy. And number 1 was click here to make a copy of the original Google slideshow, and that's what you're going to do. And once you make a copy of it, go ahead and head over to your recent files in your drive. And that'll be hopefully the first thing that you see is that lesson that you titled. Okay. So from here, again, we're building the Managing Stress lesson, but you can build using any slideshow or PDF that you want. But from here, you're going to find that lesson. You're going to right click on it. And I'd like you to open it with Smart Learning Suite. So when you right click on that Google slideshow, you'll see that you can open it with Google Slides or Smart Learning Suite. I want you to open it with Smart Learning Suite. Once you click that, it's probably going to ask you to sign in, and this is when you're going to use your district Gmail credentials, okay? So use your email address that the school district has given you to sign in. And I'll give you a second to do that. And just let us know if you need help. If you haven't used Smart Learning Suite before, it'll probably ask you to put in your display name. So that's your teacher name, Mr., Mrs., Doctor, whatever your kids call you. And I'm gonna model this one more time. So from your drive, you find the lesson you'd like to open and you right click, open with Smart Learning Suite. Okay, so right click the file, which is Google Slides, PDF, whatever you're using, open with Smart Learning Suite. Okay. And then you go ahead and sign in as yourself using your district credentials. Once you sign in, you'll probably get a pop-up that says, let's test drive a lesson experience, but we're not gonna test drive anything because we are actually going to actively do this together. So let's skip that. And we'll allow that lesson to be imported. So essentially what I've done is I've taken that Google slideshow on managing stress. It's just a 4-slide presentation. And I've opened it with Smart Learning Suite because I want to add all of those features that I showed you. And I'm going to walk you through it one feature at a time. So if you are looking at the guidance for building the managing stress lesson that we linked in the agenda, you'll see we've done number 1 and we've also done number 2. We are now on number 3, which is after the title slide, we're going to add a shout it out. Remember, I asked you what is stress? How would you define it? So what you're gonna do is from here, go to the bottom left corner. There's a plus sign. You click that plus sign and an add content dashboard appears. And this is where you get all of these amazing activities that I showed you and actually much more than what I showed you today. So like I said, from here, we are adding a shout it out. So that's what I'm going to click. And remember I told you can have multiple responses per student. I just wanted 1. If you want to have more, that's fine, but I'm going to set mine to 1 max response per student. I'm finished with that setting. And now I just replace the shout it out text with a question, which was, how would you define stress? So now I'm done adding shout it out, which is number 3 on our list. Number 4, we're now going to add a response following the slide titled stress. So after the 3rd slide now, we are going to, again, click the plus sign. This is where everything lives that you can add. And this time, instead of shout it out, we're looking at response. So let's go ahead and add that. A little wizard will pop up. And you'll see that I've included in that doc what you want to put in. But you can put in, if you don't like that stuff, you can put in whatever you want, or if you're using your own lesson. My first question that I had you do was a poll or opinion. And it was, how much stress have you experienced in the last month? That's the question I asked you, remember? And my choices were a lot of stress, some stress, or none at all. Now I just typed these in, but you could also copy and paste. Notice you can also add images. That's a feature. So someone asked about math. A lot of math teachers like to add images in of different equations or graphs that students can look at. And now let's add my second question. And instead of a poll or opinion, this time it's going to be a short answer. And it was in 1 or 2 words. What is one way you manage stress? And that was the one where we created like a whole word cloud just from your responses. So those are my 2 questions. If I want to keep adding, there's the add question button and it'll just keep going. And I can add however many questions of whatever different types I want. Let's click next and finish. And great, now my 4th slide is the response. So now we have just a couple more steps till our lesson is complete. Number 5, add the following link to the slide labeled individual handout. So let me see where individual handout is. It's right here. And I am adding a link. So you're just copying and pasting that link in by going up to these 3 items and using the Polaroid. So I'm going to grab that link, copy, and just paste it into the add web link location. So this looks pretty similar from the teacher and the student perspective, but of course we're in the teacher perspective and we're creating something for the students to use. What I like to do when I add a link, I like to select it, go to the drop-down menu and click lock. And I like to lock the link so that it doesn't get erased by a student or deleted by accident. Okay. Now, to convert workspaces and individual handouts, so remember this was a collaborative workspace. I could do it ahead of time by clicking convert to activity, or I could have done it on the fly. In this particular case, we're going to convert it. So the collaborative workspace at the bottom, click convert to activity, and you would just make it a workspace. Same thing with the individual handout. Go to the bottom where it says convert to activity and make it a handout. Just make it whatever it's labeled. Okay. We have just 2 more things to do before our lesson is complete and interactive. And the first thing is create a team quiz. So again, we are going down to the plus sign. And team quiz lives in game-based activities. When you go to game-based activities, you'll see there are about 11 different ones. So lots of ones that you can pick from. The ones that we talked about today were team quiz. And that's what that looks like. You can preview it. We also talked about something called monster quiz, which is pretty much the same structurally as team quiz, but it just has a little bit more like gamified images. So there's actually a Halloween theme for this one if you want to do this one instead. But the team quiz, like I said, that's the one we did. So I'll go ahead and show you how I built that. My first question was true, false, and it was, that was a statement actually. I'll just paste that in. Stress can be positive or negative, and that is true. So again, this is just another wizard. I'll go ahead and add my next question. This one was multiple choice. So I'll have to change that to multiple choice and paste in that question. My answers were exercise regularly. That would be the correct answer. Drink plenty of soda was my distractor, and my other distractor was do not sleep more than 5 hours a night. And just make sure you select the right answer. And my last question was, eustress is a term for positive stress. Is that true or false? I'll put that in. And we're going to say, yep, that's true. So I only had 3 questions, but of course you can add many more to make it last longer and cover all of the content that you're trying to engage your students with. When you're done, click next. You can set a time limit, let's say 20 seconds. The default is 15, but you can change it, and finish. And now my team quiz is ready to go. Number 7 is the last thing we are doing to this lesson, and it is adding a graphic organizer. So here again, plus sign. The plus sign is where all the add content lives. Now the graphic organizers live in the purple box that's labeled graphic organizers. There are 21 different graphic organizers, so there's probably plenty that you can leverage for your content area. The one I used was a Brainstorming Web. And now remember, with my Brainstorming Web, in the middle, I had written ideas for managing stress as some guidance. So I'll pick up my text tool, click there, and put in ideas for managing stress. And maybe I'll make that bold and even a little bit bigger. And remember, with things like this, sometimes I choose to lock down my object so that my students don't delete it. And this we did as a collaborative workspace, but you can convert it to either a handout or a collaborative workspace. Either way, it's a button that you press. So I'll make it into a collaborative workspace. And this is ready. So now my 4-page lesson that used to be a Google slideshow has been turned into an 8-page interactive and engaging Smart Learning Suite online lesson. So the final thing I need to do is finish editing. In the upper left corner, there's a white button that says finish editing with a check mark next to it. We definitely want to press that. And at this point, I can see the lesson from the beginning. So I can toggle down using the arrows, the up-down arrows in the lower left, and I can see and make sure that everything I want is in the right place. Yep, and the Brainstorming Web is last. Now this is a synchronous lesson, meaning I delivered it to you through our time together. We were all sort of in the same virtual space. But if I wanted to send this lesson to another teacher because maybe they want to use it, I would go up to my 3 bars. And from here, I would get the share link. And notice it says give a copy of this lesson to other teachers. I can just grab this. If I want students to access this lesson and work at their own pace, I would grab the second link. Now, this wouldn't really apply in this lesson because it has a lot of synchronous elements like shout it out, response, team quiz. Those are all synchronous. Students can't just do those on their own. But if you had something with lots of individual handouts, then you could get this link to students. Okay, so now we are at the end of our teacher experience. Is there anything anyone would like me to show them again from the teacher view? I see some questions in the chat here. Okay, I don't see anything about the teacher. I see someone ask, can students download their work? So students can take a screenshot of their work if you want them to put it somewhere else, but there's no download option for Smart Learning Suite online files. You can, however, like I mentioned earlier, when you open a lesson, you can give them the link. That way they can go in and access it again and kind of like study using that work or just review some of what you've shown them.
Teddy, would you kindly go over making a handout one more time for some of the folks that missed that step?
Sure, yeah. So I already made these into handouts. So let me open another file.
You could just add a couple blank pages perhaps.
Yeah, I could add a blank page, that's fine. So I'm gonna go back and edit.
On your handout, could you also show the instructional audio?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
That's another cool feature. Okay, so I've already converted lots of things into handouts. Oh, here. I'll convert this third slide into a handout since I haven't done anything to it. So as you're looking at this slide, again, at the bottom, you'll see a convert to activity icon. If you click that, you'll see that you can make this page an individual handout or make this page a collaborative workspace activity. So whichever one you want to do, that's what you would select. And so if I select individual handout, it just says it's a handout and it tells me it's been converted.
And so, Teddy, if you could also just add a blank page and show that anytime you have a page, whether it's a page you add as a blank page or a page that came in from your original file, you can
it's any page you want. If it's a blank page and you probably want to delete this, this template text, you could add text to it just like I did. And maybe give them a prompt in the middle of a lesson and then convert it just like we did before to a handout.
So before you,
I can do it again now.
Now that you've done that, could you add the audio? Did we?
Yeah, you can still add audio after the fact. Here, let me do it one more time though. So if I add a new page, there's the convert to activity part. And then I can also add audio. And I don't have to do both to the same page. If I wanted to add audio to maybe read something out loud or explain something to my students, and this is probably really helpful in the asynchronous session, which we're actually going to talk about next week. So this wasn't part of this session, but I am going to show you if you want to go ahead and start using it. So this instructional audio feature allows you to record yourself talking for up to 5 minutes. And then students can click that and hear your voice, hear your directions, maybe you're reading something out loud to them, etc. And then again, convert to activity is right here. Okay, let's see what other questions we can answer. The application with the PDF. I wonder if I have PDFs in my drive. It works the same way. So really anything in your drive, pretty much. Let me see if I have PDFs in my drive. Okay. So I have this one PDF. It doesn't matter what PDF it is, or if it's maybe a notebook file, or maybe it's a Google slideshow like I used. With PDFs, again, just drop them into your drive, right click, open with Smart Learning Suite. Okay, it's the same process no matter if it's a PDF or a or a Google slideshow. So anything in your drive, right click, open with Smart Learning Suite. I test drive the lesson, I skipped the test drive lesson experience because I'm showing you how to do it now, but you can always go back and do that test drive as well. So I have these 2 pages of PDFs. And then just like I did before, whether it's a PDF, Google slideshow, whatever, I use the blue plus sign at the bottom to get to the adding content.
Our variety of templates as well. I think Teddy sort of mentioned them, but if you don't have pages in your PDF or your Google Slides page that you already intend on converting into a handout or a workspace, there are handouts under activating prior knowledge, as well as under question and reflection. Everything under the other 2 colored boxes, the manipulatives and the graphic organizers, can be converted to both handouts and collaborative workspaces. So you'll have your choice with those templates. But as you can see here, Teddy is showing the activating prior knowledge templates that we've built into the system include a couple shouted out activities, a response activity, and 2 handouts. One is called an entrance ticket and one is draw what you know. So those are rooted in teaching strategies that many teachers already use today, but perhaps are sort of building from scratch, and we wanted to provide some templates to make lesson creation a little faster and easier for you.
Yeah, so lots of choices. Obviously, we couldn't really show you every one of these today, but they all work in a similar way. So like if you want to do a shout it out, it's a template that's built in and you customize it. Response, any of our game-based activities, they're all these little wizards and you customize them with your content. And same thing for the activating prior knowledge, questioning and reflection. We also have some manipulatives and, like we used earlier, graphic organizers. Remember, I used the Brainstorming Web.
So someone asked a question. I think this question has actually come up a couple of times, and I think it's worth addressing for the whole group.
Okay.
We recommend that you make a copy of the lesson for each group of students that you plan to work with in that lesson. So if you're teaching a history course, you know, the same lesson material in that history course 3 times a day to 3 different groups of students, build the lesson out once and then make the copy. I don't know if Teddy, if we have time to show the copy process.
Yeah.
But that way your student work is, as Teddy mentioned earlier, the student work is captured in the lesson and saved inside that lesson. So if you have 3 different groups of students, then you'll have a copy of the lesson for each group of students and their work will be separated from each other. You wouldn't want to mix up your student work and the grades you might deem from that student work from group A with group B or C. So we do recommend making those copies.
Yeah, so this is something someone asked about actually earlier. So I was showing her, so if you go up here, well, anytime you open a lesson, you can go up here and you can make a copy of the lesson. And then you can modify certain copies to differentiate it for different class sections, or just make copies so that, like someone was asking earlier, you wouldn't need to have, you know, like 100 handouts all in one lesson, and you could actually separate each lesson by period. Okay.
Thanks, Teddy. And for everyone who's watching Teddy's screen or getting lost playing around in their own screen, Kim Robertson has mentioned that the recording of this session will be posted on your PGCPS website, so watch for that. We want to make sure that you can come back to this as a resource and review it anytime that you need.
Okay. All right. So I don't know if there's any other questions. Students are added when they log in, or do you add them? Okay. So yeah, good question. So just like you connected to my lesson where I expanded this information, you can expand this information and you have a code that students use to sign into your class. So they literally go to hellosmart.com just like you did, and they sign into your class using your code, and everyone has a code that remains the same. So you don't have to remember it because you actually can just pop it out like I did. Although you will of course remember it because you'll see it so many times. And that's for synchronous lessons, which we're talking about today. But if you'd like to learn more about perhaps asynchronous lessons or self-paced lesson assignments, please do join us for next week's session on that topic.
I just want to remind everybody again that when you're creating your or signing into Smart Online, you're using your PG email address. And so that authenticates you. There's no code to download anymore to add to your laptop. You use your PG email address. That puts you into Smart Online. It also, for those of you who have used the Notebook software, when you log into Notebook, there's an account link. You can log into that link also, and that will authenticate you so you have the latest in the notebook software.
Hi, Noreen, this is Monica. I just also wanted to add that for everyone that is attending today, if you also join us again next Wednesday for the second part of the SMART session, you will be eligible to receive a half-day workshop pay for attending both sessions, but you have to attend both of them in order to receive that half-day workshop pay. So again, we hope to see you again next week.
Thank you, Monica.
There have been some questions about using this within Google Classroom. So I just wanted to chime in, and some of them, we've been trying to answer all the questions in the chat. Beth has been doing an amazing job. But just want to chime in and add that as you have seen today, Teddy showed you how to use this all through your Google Drive. And so you have, essentially you have two options. If you want to use the share link from the lesson itself and paste that somewhere in your Google Drive or anywhere else for your students to access, certainly you are welcome to do that. If you want to post a lesson into Google Classroom, you can do that directly from that Google Drive integration with Google Classroom. So when you create a lesson in Google Classroom, there is an option to bring a file in from Google Drive, and you can just do that with the Smart Learning Suite files. You don't have to make any adjustments to the settings. The Smart Learning Suite file will operate normally when the students click on that link to the file, just as it would operate for them if you sent them an email with the share link or you posted the share link somewhere else for them. So hopefully that makes sense. Perhaps next week, since Teddy is addressing asynchronous learning, maybe Teddy, you could touch on that during your presentation and actually show the Google Classroom environment.
Yeah, that'll be next week. Like I mentioned, this is all about synchronous learning. So we don't want to show you everything that was ever put into Smart Learning Suite online, but we will focus on those more asynchronous learning features that could help you serve the Google Classroom environment as well. Although if you do want them to reference, you know, a synchronous lesson that you've already done as study material, you could of course post that link in Google Classroom. You can even email it to absent students.
Yeah. Thank you. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, looks like a lot of people are saying this helped and it was good. That's awesome. If you do get a chance to go back to our agenda and resources, like we mentioned, there's plenty of step-by-step resources for you, as well as something called the Smart Exchange, where you can get some lesson ideas and even entire lessons from other educators. You also have an opportunity to give us your feedback, which I would appreciate prior to next week's session, so that I might improve anything that you felt was not adequate, or anything you really liked. Let us know that as well, so that we can hopefully plan for next week a little bit better. Okay. And we'll hang out for a couple of minutes if anybody wants to hang out with us.
I believe the survey is on the agenda. Is that correct, Teddy?
Yes, it is. The feedback survey is in the agenda. So it's going to be, if you scroll down to the last item, it is under Give Us Your Feedback, item number 5. Okay.
Also just place the link to it in the chat.
Thanks, Beth. I just saw that.
Thank you.
The same thing. Someone was asking, a couple of people were asking if they have a sign-in sheet or attendance form. Noreen, did you want
So what we do is once we are finished today, we're going to use the Zoom attendance.
Okay,
to
perfect.
go in and put it in my PPS.
Absolutely. I can definitely send that to you.
My question was, is there a waiting list for the